The vestry smelled like starch and cheap lilies. I adjusted the cufflink on my right sleeve. Platinum. Understated. A gift from my father on my 30th birthday. It felt heavier than usual. Victoria was on the phone again. She had her back to me, her voice low, sharpest that cut through the silence. Julian, I told you not to call me this morning. What part of I'm getting married is confusing? I checked my watch. 10:17 a.m. 3 minutes until we were supposed to be at the altar at St. Patrick's. 3 minutes until Victoria Sterling, CEO of Sterling Tech, became my wife and, more importantly, solidified the most lucrative logistics contract in the city's history with Apex Global. He's doing what? She snapped. No, don't let him touch the register. I'll be there. I can't be there. I'm literally at my wedding. Julian, I stepped forward, smoothing down my tuxedo jacket. Tori, we need to go. She waved a manicured hand at me, her diamond engagement ring catching the fluorescent light. Hold on. Ethan, this is important. Important, right. Julian Reeves, her first love and current professional disaster, was apparently more important than David Chun, the CEO of Apex Global, who was currently sitting in the front pew with 100 of his senior executives. This wedding wasn't a celebration. It was a closing dinner without the food. It was optics, and Victoria was currently failing the optics test. It's a liquidity issue, she whispered into the phone, turning away from me again. If the distributor doesn't get paid today, we lose the kegs for the weekend. No, you handle it. Use the line of credit. I set up. I heard a slurred voice on the other end. Julian sounded drunk. At 10 in the morning. Baby, just come down here. The guys want to see you. They don't believe you're actually going through with this Vance thing. Victoria laughed, a brittle, nervous sound. Shut up. I'll call you back. She hung up and spun around, her veil catching on a nearby coat rack. Sorry about that. Julian's having some pre-opening jitters at the new bar. Pre-opening jitters. I repeated flatly. He's slurring his words. Tori, and we're about to walk in front of David Chun. The same David Chun whose signature we need on a 10-year, $200 million contract. She rolled her eyes, a gesture that usually made me clench my jaw. Today, it just made me tired. Relax. Ethan, David's old school, but he's not blind. He knows mergers have complexities. Think of Julian as a complex asset. I think of him as a liability you're letting bleed into our Q3 presentation. I said, hang up the phone. Put on silent. Let's go. She huffed but complied, dropping the phone into her crystal-beaded clutch as we walked toward the sanctuary doors. She linked her arm through mine. You know, for someone who claims not to care about the fluff, you're awfully tense about a few drunk texts. I don't care about the fluff. I said, nudging the heavy oak door open. The organ music swelled, a wall of sound that usually signaled the beginning of a grand entrance. Today, it felt like a countdown. I care about the 8-figure renewal that's currently watching us walk in 3 minutes late because you were coaching your ex-boyfriend through a hangover. The aisle felt longer than usual. I kept my gaze fixed on the crucifix, not on the sea of turned heads. I could feel their eyes, the board members from Vance Capital, the execs from Apex, my father, Marcus, sitting ramrod straight in the third pew, his expression unreadable. He hated inefficiency more than he hated failure. Today, Victoria was serving him a double dose. We reached the altar. The priest, a nervous young man named Father O'Malley, gave us a tight smile. Victoria's grip on my arm loosened. She was scanning the crowd. I followed her gaze. Julian was standing near the side entrance, leaning against a pillar. He was wearing a rumpled suit that looked like he'd slept in it. He raised a glass, a fucking champagne flute, in a mocking toast. Victoria's breath hitched. I squeezed her arm, a silent warning. Focus. The priest began the opening prayers. I tuned him out. My mind was already on the reception. I needed to make sure David Chun was seated at the head table. I needed to steer the conversation toward Apex's expansion into the Midwest. I needed to make sure Victoria didn't have another liquidity crisis during the salad course. Then, the vows. The priest turned to Victoria. Victoria, do you take Ethan to be your lawfully wedded husband? Victoria didn't answer immediately. She was staring at her phone, which was vibrating silently in her clutch. Her knuckles went white. She looked up at me, then past me, to Julian, her face drained of color. She looked like she'd seen a ghost, or a very large, very angry bank statement. Victoria, the priest prompted gently. She held up a finger. 1 second. Father. She pulled out her phone. A text. I saw the preview on her lock screen. It was from Julian. They're going to repossess the taps. I need $50,000. Now, she looked at me, her eyes wide with a panic that had nothing to do with holy matrimony. Ethan, put the phone away. I murmured, keeping my smile fixed for the benefit of the crowd. We'll talk about it after. I can't, she whispered. She looked at Julian again. He gave her a sad, puppy dog look that probably worked when they were in college, but now just made him look like a con artist who'd lost his nerve. Victoria grabbed the microphone from the priest's hand. The feedback squealed, making half the congregation wince. The organ music died. A heavy, suffocating silence fell over the cathedral. Stop the wedding, she announced. Her voice echoed in the vast space. A collective gasp rippled through the pews. My father didn't move, but I saw his jaw tighten. Davidson leaned forward, his brow furrowed in confusion, or maybe disgust. Tori, I said quietly, leaning toward her. What the hell are you doing? She ignored me. She looked out at the crowd, her chin trembling. I am sorry. I can't do this. I thought I could. I thought I could marry you, Ethan, and it would be enough. But it's not. My heart. My heart belongs to someone else. She looked directly at Julian. He pushed off the pillar, a slow, smug grin spreading across his face. He actually had the audacity to wink at her. I'm in love with Julian, Victoria declared, her voice gaining strength. I've always been in love with Julian, and I won't start my life with a lie. She dropped the microphone. It hit the marble floor with a clang that seemed to shake the foundation. She didn't look at me again. She gathered her massive train and ran down the aisle, her heels clicking frantically on the stone. Julian met her halfway, sweeping her into a dramatic, Hollywood-style kiss that belonged in a music video, not a Gothic cathedral. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood there, alone at the altar, under the watchful eyes of 500 of New York's elite. I could feel the heat rising up my neck. But I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I didn't yell. I just looked out at the sea of stunned faces. Then, I bent down and picked up the microphone. I tapped it once. The sound echoed. I waited for the murmuring to die down. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice calm, steady, and loud enough to reach the back of the nave. Apologies for the technical difficulty. If you'll check your programs, there's a champagne toast scheduled for noon in the Roosevelt Room at the Plaza. Please, enjoy. The open bar is fully stocked, courtesy of Vance Capital. I'll be handling the dissolution paperwork and the catering adjustments personally. Thank you for coming. I handed the microphone back to a stunned Father O'Malley. I didn't rush. I walked down the aisle at the same measured pace I'd used to walk up it. As I passed David Chun, he was standing. He didn't offer sympathy. He offered a slow, deliberate nod. Sterling just lost her biggest account's respect, he muttered, just loud enough for me to hear. I paused. Respect is earned. David, not worn on a finger. He grunted. You handle that well. Better than most would. Most people don't understand the difference between a personal slight and a market correction. I said, have a drink. I'll be in touch tomorrow morning. I kept walking. I didn't look back at the altar, at the empty space where Victoria had stood, or at Julian, who was probably already calculating how much champagne he could steal from the reception. I pushed through the heavy wooden doors of the cathedral and stepped out into the bright Manhattan sunlight. Sarah Jenkins, my assistant, was waiting by the town car, her tablet already in hand. She didn't say, I'm sorry, or are you okay? She knew better. Sir, she said briskly, Apex's legal team is already circulating. They're asking if Sterling Tech's instability affects our Q3 projections. I've drafted a preliminary response highlighting our operational independence and a key person clause in Section 4B of the Apex Sterling contract. I slid into the back of the Mercedes. Good. Send it. CC me. Then, cancel the honeymoon suite at the plaza. Book me a conference room at the office instead. I want a full audit of Sterling Tech's accounts payable by 6 tonight. Focus on anything tied to a Reeves Hospitality Group. Consider it done. Sarah said, sliding into the front seat. And sir, for what it's worth, she always was a terrible long-term investment. I looked out the window as we pulled away from the curb. The cathedral shrank in the distance. She wasn't an investment, Sarah. She was a merger that failed due diligence. And now, we're in the red. Let's get back to zero. I pulled out my phone. I had 17 missed calls from Victoria. I blocked the number. Then, I opened my email and started typing a message to David Chun. The subject line was simple: Apex Global, Continuity and Opportunity. The city blurred past the windows. Somewhere out there, Victoria was probably crying into Julian's shoulder, thinking she'd chosen love over logic. She was wrong. She hadn't chosen love. She'd chosen liquidity crisis and a man who couldn't manage a checking account. And she just handed me the leverage I needed to burn her empire to the ground. I hit send on the email. The game had changed. And for the first time since I proposed to Victoria Sterling, I was actually looking forward to Monday. My father called at 7:03 a.m. I was already in the Vance Capital conference room, 3 espressos deep, surrounded by printouts of Sterling Tech's last 8 quarterly reports. You're all over the post. Marcus Vance said by way of greeting. His voice was gravelly. The result of 50 years of Cuban cigars and barking orders. Page 6. You look like a goddamn idiot. Good morning to you too, Dad, I said, highlighting a line item labeled consulting fees. Reeves Holdings. The amount was suspiciously round. $50,000. Every month for the last year. Don't get cute with me. Ethan, sentiment is for people who can't afford to lose money. Which one are you? I leaned back in the leather chair. She didn't leave me. Dad, she left a sinking ship. I'm just the only one who realized we weren't on the same vessel anymore. Semantics. The Vance name was front and center at that circus. Now, every institutional investor in the tri-state area is wondering if we're unstable. He paused. I could hear the strike of a match. You gonna burn the bitch to the ground? Or do I need to come out of retirement? I've got it handled. I flipped to the master service agreement between Sterling Tech and Apex Global. There, Section 4B, Subsection 3, Key Person Clause. If a key executive's public conduct materially jeopardizes the client's brand integrity or operational stability, the client reserves the right to terminate without penalty. Victoria's alter meltdown wasn't just a scandal. It was a material breach. You've got 24 hours before the markets open. Marcus said, Chen's a cold son of a bitch, but he hates chaos. If you don't have a proposal on his desk by Monday at 9, he'll walk. And if he walks, Sterling Tech bleeds out. Make it messy. Ethan, make it look easy. He hung up. I tossed the phone onto the table. Sarah pushed open the door, carrying a fresh pot of coffee and a manila folder thick enough to choke a horse. Reeves Hospitality Group, she said, dropping the folder in front of me. It's a mess. 3 bars, all operating at a loss. 2 liens on the property for Flagship on the Lower East Side. And Victoria's been funneling cash into it via a series of shell companies to hide the transfers from her board. I opened the folder. Bank statements. Guide transfers. Julian's signature was on every page. Sloppy and arrogant. How deep? Deep enough that if Apex pulls their contract, Sterling Tech's cash flow turns negative by the end of Q3. Julian's been using her personal line of credit as a piggy bank. He's leveraged 3 of her brownstones as collateral for his latest concept, a speakeasy that's already failing health inspections. I nodded. Find me Chun. He's not answering his direct line. He's at the Siwan Hockey Yacht Club. Sarah said, without looking up from her tablet, spending the weekend with his grandkids. Security is tight, but I pulled a favor from his chief of staff. You've got a 10-minute window at 2 o'clock. If you're late, the window closes. Book the helicopter. I said, standing up, and get me everything on Julian's personal debts. Credit cards, outstanding loans, gambling markers, anything that makes him look like a bigger liability than Victoria. On it. She paused at the door. Sir, when you talk to Chun, don't mention the wedding. Mention the margin erosion. Mention the risk to his supply chain. He doesn't care about your ego. He cares about his bottom line. I know the pitch. Sarah, the helicopter ride to Long Island was 30 minutes of pure noise. I spent it reading the key person clause until I had it memorized. By the time we landed on the club's private pad, I had a clear sense of the angle. Victoria hadn't just embarrassed herself. She created an unacceptable level of risk for Apex. And where there's risk, there's an exit clause. The club was exactly what you'd expect. Dark wood, brass fixtures, and the distinct smell of old money and older bourbon. I found Chun on the veranda, overlooking the sound, watching his grandsons race remote control sailboats. He didn't turn around when I approached. Vance, he said, you've got a lot of nerve showing up here. I figured you'd be drowning your sorrows in scotch. Scotch is for celebrating. David, I said, pulling up a chair without waiting for an invitation. I'm here to talk business. Specifically, how Victoria Sterling's emotional authenticity is about to cost you $50 million in logistical delays. That got his attention. He turned, his eyes narrowing behind wire-rimmed glasses. You've got 60 seconds before I call security. I'm not interested in your post-mortem on yesterday's fiasco. 60 seconds. I agreed. Sterling Tech's operational stability is directly tied to Victoria's personal finances, and her personal finances are currently propping up Julian Reeves's failing bar empire. If Apex doesn't act, you're exposed, not just to reputational risk, but to real, quantifiable losses with her cash flow craters next quarter. Chen's jaw tightened. He hated surprises. He hated financial recklessness even more. You're telling me Sterling's using Apex's retainers to fund her boyfriend's liquor habit? Not just funding it. I said, sliding a printed summary across the small table. She's leveraged her personal assets that back Sterling Tech's performance bonds, to secure loans for Reeves. If he defaults, and he will, her credit rating tanks. Your service levels drop, and your board starts asking why you didn't see it coming. He scanned the document. I watched his face carefully. The flicker of disgust when he saw the numbers. The tightening of his lips when he realized the scale of the exposure. This is verified? Every line item. I said, Sarah Jenkins. My COO audited the transfers herself. It's all there. The liens, the shell companies, the credit lines. Victoria's been playing venture capitalist with your money, David, and she's losing. He folded the paper and tucked it into his blazer pocket. Why are you telling me this? Why not let her hang herself and pick up the pieces? Because I don't want the pieces. I said, I want the whole machine. Vance Capital can absorb the Apex Contract Management Division by Tuesday. We'll cut the vanity overhead Victoria used to fund her lifestyle, the private jets, the 5-star retreats, the consulting fees for her friends. We'll streamline the operation, reduce your costs by 20%, and guarantee the same service levels without the drama. He studied me for a long moment. Out on the water, one of the sailboats capsized. His youngest grandson started crying. Chun didn't even glance at them. You're confident. I'm prepared. I corrected. Victoria thinks this is about a wedding. It's not. It's about a merger that failed. And now, you've got a choice. Stick with a CEO who's emotionally compromised and financially overextended, or move to a firm that treats your contract like the multi-million-dollar asset it is. He stood up. 9 o'clock Monday. My office. If you can deliver a transition plan that doesn't disrupt my supply chain, the contract is yours. If you waste my time, Vance Capital will never see another RFP from Apex Global. Understood? Understood. He started to walk away. then paused. One more thing. Ethan, your father called me this morning. He's worried about you. Said you might be distracted. I smiled thinly. Tell Marcus I'm exactly where I need to be. See that you stay there. He nodded once and walked back toward his family. I stayed on the veranda for another 10 minutes, watching the sailboats. Sarah called as the helicopter powered up. Status? I asked. Julian just posted a photo on Instagram, she said. Him and Victoria at some dive bar in Queens. Caption reads, starting our forever the right way. The comments are brutal. Half of Sterling Tech's board is already calling for an emergency session. Leak the financials. I said, anonymously, to the Journal and Bloomberg. Make sure they focus on the Reeves connection. Done. And sir, David Chen's office just confirmed your 9 a.m. slot. They've also moved Victoria's meeting to 11. They want to hear both sides. They've already heard her side. I said, watching the sun glint off the sound. It involved a runaway bride and a drunk at the altar. Now, they're going to hear mine. It involves solvency, continuity, and a 20% cost reduction. I hung up as a helicopter lifted off. Below, the yacht club shrank to a toy-sized replica. Victoria thought she'd won because she had Julian. She thought she'd chosen passion over pragmatism, but she'd forgotten one thing. In this town, pragmatism pays the bills. Passion just racks up the debt. By the time I landed back in the city, Sarah had sent over the draft of the transition plan. It was 70 pages of airtight logic, risk mitigation strategies, and cost-benefit analyses. I spent the rest of the evening refining it, tweaking the margins, and triple-checking the numbers. At midnight, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. A text from Victoria. Ethan, please. I know I messed up. Julian's not what I thought. Can we talk? I deleted the message. Then I blocked the number. I had a meeting at 9, and I intended to own the room. Security at Apex Global didn't bother with pleasantries. They scanned my briefcase, checked my ID twice, and escorted me to the executive elevator without a word. Sarah was already there, leaning against the walnut-paneled wall, scrolling through her tablet. She didn't look up. Status. I said, Victoria arrived 7 minutes ago. She murmured, Julian's with her. He's wearing a suit that doesn't fit and carrying a latte. Her attorney, Greg Patterson from Skadden, is in the green room. David's chief of staff is circulating a revised agenda. Your meeting is still at 9. Hers is at 11. But they've moved you both to the West Wing conference room. Same table. I nodded. Pressure play. David wants to see the contrast in real time, or he wants to watch her squirm. Sarah said, finally glancing at me, I've got the wire transfer receipts. The one showing Julian moving funds from Victoria's personal accounts to his business overnight. He cleared out 2 of her lines of credit, roughly $400,000. Get that to Patterson anonymously. I said, he's a shark, but he's not stupid. If he thinks his client is about to be indicted for fraud, he'll advise her to settle. The elevator doors opened. The conference room was a slab of glass and steel overlooking the Hudson. Victoria was already there, sitting at the far end of the 40-foot table. Julian was beside her, slouched in his chair, scrolling through his phone. Victoria looked like she'd slept in her clothes. Her makeup was smeared, and her hair was pulled back in a messy knot. She'd traded the wedding dress for a wrinkled power suit that looked like it came from a sample sale. She stood up as I walked in. Ethan, thank God. We need to talk. I didn't sit. I placed my briefcase on the table near the head of the room, David's seat, and popped the latches. Morning. Torai, Julian, I'm here for a business meeting. If you'd like to schedule a personal appointment, you can speak with Sarah. Julian looked up, sneering, still playing the big shot. Huh, must be nice to have daddy's money to fall back on when your fiancée dumps you at the altar. I ignored him. I started laying out the binders, 70 pages of transition plans, risk assessments, and cost projections. Sarah moved to the AV system, connecting my laptop to the wall-mounted screens. Victoria stepped closer, lowering her voice. Ethan, please, listen to me. Julian made a mistake. He took some money. But it's not what it looks like. We can fix this. We can still get married. The wedding was just a hiccup. We can do a smaller ceremony. Something intimate. I finally looked at her. A hiccup? Torai, you left me standing in front of 500 people, including the CEO of your largest client, to run off with a man who can't manage a bar tab. That's not a hiccup. That's a systemic failure judgment. I was scared, she hissed. I saw the texts about the repossession, and I panicked. I thought if I didn't go with him, he'd lose everything. He's already lost everything. I said evenly. And now, thanks to your panic, you're about to lose a $200 million contract. Sit down. The adults are talking. Before she could respond, the doors opened. David Chen walked in, flanked by his CFO, a stern woman named Linda Cho, and two junior associates carrying legal pads. He didn't acknowledge Victoria or Julian. He nodded at me. Mr. Vance, you're prompt. I appreciate that. David, I said, shaking his hand. Thank you for the time. I'll keep this focused. Victoria rushed forward. Mr. Chun, please. I apologize for Saturday. It was a personal matter that got out of hand. But I assure you, Sterling Tech's operations are completely unaffected. Our infrastructure is solid. Our team is ready to move forward with the Midwest expansion. Your infrastructure is funded by my retainers. Victoria. David cut her off, his voice cold. And your team is currently being managed by a woman whose personal credit lines are being liquidated to cover her boyfriend's bar tabs. That's not solid. That's a liability. Julian stood up, puffing out his chest. Hey, don't talk about my business like that. I'm a creative entrepreneur. The hospitality industry is volatile. It's volatile because you're stealing from your investors. I said, clicking the remote. The screens lit up with bank statements. These are wire transfers from Victoria Sterling's personal accounts to Reeves Hospitality Group, dated last night, for $100,000 moved in 6 separate transactions, all after she left the altar, all while Sterling Tech's board was in emergency session. Victoria's face went white. Ethan, what are you doing? Those are private, they're relevant. David said, leaning forward to study the screen. Go on. Vance. I advanced the slides. Julian Reeves has been leveraging Victoria's assets for the last 18 months. 3 brownstones used as collateral, 2 outstanding liens on his primary business location, and, most recently, he's been diverting funds from Sterling Tech's marketing budget to pay his personal gambling debts. The Apex contract requires a key person with a clean financial record. Victoria's record isn't just dirty, it's toxic. Is this true? David asked Victoria, his tone dangerously quiet. She looked at Julian, her eyes filling with tears. It's not that simple. Julian was helping me diversify. The bars were supposed to be a side project that's costing Sterling Tech 8 figures in potential liability. Linda cho intozet, tapping her pen on her legal pad. Mr. Chun, if this information is accurate, we have grounds for immediate termination under Section 4B. I'm aware of the clause. Linda, David said. He turned back to Victoria. You were supposed to be my partner in this expansion. Instead, you've been running a personal slush fund for a man who can't keep his liquor license. I can explain. Victoria Kraid, Ethan is twisting the numbers. He's trying to sabotage me because I left him. I shook my head. This isn't about Saturday. Torai, it's about Friday and Thursday. And every day you let Julian use your company as his personal ATM. David, my proposal is simple. Vance Capital assumes full operational control of the Apex account, effective immediately. We absorb your existing team, honor all current SLAs, and reduce your overhead by 20% by eliminating the executive lifestyle. Expenses Victoria was using to subsidize her personal life. No drama. No liquidity crisis. Just results. David steepled his fingers. And what guarantees do I have that you won't turn around and do the same thing? I don't mix business with pleasure. I said, and I don't sign contracts with people who can't pass a basic credit check. Sarah? Sarah stepped forward, handing David a sealed envelope. Mr. Chun, This contains Vance Capital's most recent audit, signed off by PwC. You'll also find letters of intent from our top 3 logistics partners, confirming their willingness to integrate with your supply chain within 72 hours. We're ready to transition today. David opened the envelope, scanning the documents. The room was silent except for the rustle of paper. Julian shifted uncomfortably, reaching for his latte. I noticed his hand was shaking. Finally, David looked up. Victoria, do you have a counterproposal? She looked desperate. David, please. I'll fire Julian. I'll pay back every cent. I'll work for free for the next year. Just don't give the contract to him. He'll dismantle everything I built. You built a house of cards on a foundation of bad debt. David said. He stood up. Mr. Vance, your proposal is acceptable, pending final legal review. The Apex Global account will be transferred to Vance Capital by close of business today. Victoria, you'll receive a formal notice of termination within the hour. Please clear your office by 5 o'clock. Victoria lunged for me, her hands clawing at my arm. Ethan, you bastard. You planned this. You wanted this to happen. Security moved in. 2 men in dark suits gently but firmly restraining her. Julian backed away, his face pale. Joe, chill out. Torai, don't make this worse. Worse? She shrieked, spinning on him. You took everything. The brownstones. The cash. You said it was temporary. I didn't take shit. Julian muttered, backing toward the door. You gave it to me. Besides, your company's tanking anyway. I'm out. He bolted. Victoria screamed after him, but the security guards were already escorting her toward the exit. She looked back at me, her face streaked with mascara. Ethan, please. I made a mistake. I love you. I always have. We can fix this. Just tell David to wait. The time for fixing things was before you humiliated me in front of the city. I said, my voice flat. Now, the only thing you're fixing is Sterling Tech's bankruptcy filing. Sarah will show you the door. Or security will. Choose wisely. David watched her go, then turned back to me. You played that well. Vance. Cold, but effective. Sentiment is a luxury. David, I said, closing my briefcase. And Victoria just proved she can't afford it. He grunted. Linda will handle the paperwork. Be ready to onboard the Apex team by noon. And Vance, yes? Don't make me regret choosing pragmatism over whatever the hell that was. He gestured toward the door Victoria had exited. You won't. I said, pragmatism pays the bills. Passion just racks up the debt. As I walked out, my phone rang. Unknown number. I knew who it was. I declined the call and blocked the number. Sarah fell into step beside me. Julian just tried to access Victoria's remaining credit lines. She reported they've all been frozen. And the Journal just published a story about Sterling Tech's financial troubles. Stocks down 30% in pre-market. I hit the button for the elevator. Get me a list of Sterling Tech's remaining assets. If they're selling at a discount, I want first refusal. Already on it, she said. And sir, congratulations. You just acquired a $200 million account before your coffee got cold. The elevator doors closed. I looked at my reflection in the polished metal. No Ismail, no triumph, just another deal closed. Another problem solved. Victoria thought she'd left me for something better. She'd left me for the ruins. And now, the ruins belong to me. The lobby of Vance Capital moves at a different speed than the rest of the city. No one runs here. No one begs. By 10:30, I'd already onboarded 12 senior managers from the Apex transition team. Sarah had the integration roadmap projected on 3 walls of the war room. We were ahead of schedule. My phone buzzed. Blocked number. Again, I declined it and dropped the phone onto the glass desk. She's called 7 times in the last hour. Sarah said without looking up from her tablet. Left 3 voicemails. The latest one's audio flagged our keyword alerts. Please. Mistake and love. Want me to purge the server? Not yet. I said, forward them to legal. Might be useful when she tries to sue for wrongful termination of our personal relationship. Sarah almost cracked a smile. Almost. Julian Reeves was picked up by NYPD Financial Crimes Unit 20 minutes ago. Grand larceny, fraud, and skipping bail on a prior DUI. Looks like he emptied Victoria's last liquid accounts before the freeze hit. Roughly 800,000 total now. I nodded. And Sterling Tech? Chapter 11 filing went live at 10. Stocks halted. The boards dissolved. Patterson, her attorney, just walked off the case. Cited irreconcilable differences regarding fiscal reality. Send a memo to the transition team. I said, any Sterling Tech employees we're retaining are to report to HR by 2. Anyone with a Reeves connection gets a severance check and a security escort out. Sarah tapped a few commands into her tablet. Done. Also, Victoria Sterling just entered the building. I didn't look up. Security should stop her at the turnstiles. She's not at the turnstiles. Sarah said, she's at the reception desk. Crying, making a scene. The managing director of Apex is on the elevator. Due any second. If he sees this, I'll handle it. I stood, smoothing my shirt. Give me 2 minutes. Then called down to security. Tell them to wait for my signal. The lobby was all chrome and marble, designed to intimidate. Victoria was doing her best to ruin the aesthetic. She was still in yesterday's rumpled suit, but she'd attempted to fix her makeup. It wasn't working. Her eyes were swollen, her hands shaking as she gripped the edge of the reception desk. I need to see Ethan, she was telling the terrified receptionist. Please, it's an emergency. He'll want to hear this. Ms. Sterling, I said, my voice echoing slightly in the high ceiling. This is a private office, not a confessional. She spun around, tears instantly welling up again. Ethan, oh God, thank you. I need your help. Julian, he's gone. He took everything. The brownstones, the cars, the cash in my checking account. I am ruined. We're ruined. We're not anything. Torai, I said, stopping a few feet away. I kept my hands in my pockets. You ended, the second you walked out of ST. Patrick's. What happened after that is your sole proprietorship. But I was confused, she sobbed, taking a step toward me. I thought I loved him. I thought he needed me. But it was a lie. Everything he said was a lie. I see that now. I was stupid. Ethan, so stupid. But I still love you. I always have. We can fix this. We can get married today. Right now. I don't care about the big wedding. I just want you. A few junior analysts had stopped to stare. I ignored them. You don't want me. Torai, you want a bailout. You want someone to pay off Julian's debts and pretend Saturday never happened. But it did happen. And now, there are consequences. I'll sign anything, she pleaded, grabbing my arm. I let her touch me for exactly 2 seconds before stepping back. A postnup, a prenup. I'll put everything in your name. Sterling Tech, what's left of it? It's yours. Just don't let me lose everything. You already lost everything. I said, you lost Sterling Tech the moment you used its marketing budget to pay Julian's poker debts. You lost Apex when you decided your heart was more important than a $200 million contract. And you lost me when you chose a man who views you as a line of credit instead of a partner. You're a monster, she whispered, her voice breaking. You're taking everything from me. You're enjoying this. I'm not taking anything. I said, my tone flat. I'm acquiring assets at market value. And right now, your market value is bankrupt. As for enjoyment, I don't derive pleasure from cleaning up other people's messes. It's just work. And unlike you, I'm good at my job. The elevator chimed. David Chin stepped out, flanked by 2 Apex VPs. He glanced at Victoria, then at me, his expression unreadable. Mr. Vance, David said, everything under control? Just wrapping up a personal matter. David, I said, Ms. Sterling was just leaving. Victoria looked from David to me, realization dawning in her bloodshot eyes. You planned this. From the beginning, you wanted me to fail. I wanted a reliable partner for Apex. I corrected. You failed yourself. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have a supply chain to optimize. I turned toward the elevator. David gave Victoria a look of pure disdain before following me. Over his shoulder, he muttered, "Should have stuck with the sure thing. Victoria, emotion is a poor substitute for competence." The elevator doors closed, sealing her out. Sarah was waiting in the private alcove on the executive floor. Security is standing down, she reported, but Victoria's refusing to leave the lobby. She's telling the receptionist she's waiting for you to come to your senses. She's not waiting for me. I said, she's waiting for a miracle. And miracles aren't in my portfolio. I check my watch. Get legal on the phone. I want a cease and desist drafted for her if she contacts any Vance Capital employee again. And have HR send out the retention offers to the Sterling tech staff we vetted. Priority on the logistics team. Already sent. Sarah said, "Also, your father called. He saw the journal piece. He says, 'Not bad. Kid, now don't get soft.'" I allowed myself a small, dry smile. Tell him I'm allergic to soft. And Sarah? Yes, sir. By Sterling text domain name. The one she used for her corporate email. I don't want anyone impersonating her. When the creditors come calling, consider it done. I spent the rest of the afternoon buried in transition meetings. By 6 o'clock, the Apex integration was 80% complete. I rode the elevator down alone, expecting the lobby to be empty. It wasn't. Victoria was still there, curled up in a chair near the fountain, looking small and broken. She didn't look up as I walked past. I paused, not out of pity, but out of a need for closure. "Torai," I said. She flinched. "It's over. Not just a wedding, not just a company. The idea of you as a competent executive, a reliable partner, or even a rational human being, that's over. Walk away, find a new city, a new name, and try not to burn that one down too. Because if you come near me, my company, or my clients again, I won't be cold. I'll be ruthless. Understand?" She nodded, a jerky, miserable motion. I didn't wait for a response. I walked out into the cooling evening air, past a line of town cars, and headed toward the helipad. The city was still moving. The markets were still trading. And Victoria Sterling was already becoming a footnote in a very profitable quarter. My phone buzzed one last time. A news alert. Julian Reeves denied bail. Victims include prominent CEO. I deleted it. I didn't need to read about her mistakes anymore. I had a business to run. The helicopter blades whipped up the wind as I boarded. As we lifted off, I looked down at the grid of lights. Somewhere in that maze, Victoria was learning that love doesn't pay the bills, and that happily ever after is just a fairy tale people tell themselves before the foreclosure notice arrives. I leaned back against the leather seat and closed my eyes. Monday was over, and I owned everything that mattered.